This video covers the basics of what a y-intercept is and what a gradient is. The y-intercept is the point at which a line crosses the y-axis. And the gradient is a description of how steep the line is. And gradients can be described as being either positive, negative, zero, or undefined. In this video, we'll cover the y-intercept, what it is and what it can look like, and we'll cover positive and negative gradients. These other two down here, zero and undefined, will be covered in a separate video. So first of all, here we have a line, and if we look at where it's crossing the y-axis, so this is the y-axis along here, at the moment it's crossing at y being 0. So it's intercepted. Now we've shifted the line up, and now the intercept is y equals plus 4. What about this one? This one is y equals negative 7. And let's come back up to 0. So anytime you're looking for a y-intercept, it's fairly simple to find. You just need to look at where it's crossing the y-axis and look at the number on your grid. So when we see an equation that says y equals mx plus c, and you have a number in there for gradient and y-intercept, your y-intercept will be there. So for that first one, it would be, well, plus 0, which you wouldn't write on there anyway. The second one would be plus 4. The third one would have been negative 7. Okay? The y-intercept's fairly straightforward. Now what we're going to do is we're going to anchor the y-intercept at 0. So the y-intercept is not going to change for this line anymore. So without worrying about y-intercepts, we are now just going to look at gradients. And as you remember from before, gradients is describing how steep a line is. So the gradient, you'll know it as rise over run. But what does that really mean? Well, if we have a look at this line here, and we start from 0 here, we can see that for 1 unit that this graph rises, it also runs 1 unit. So here, the gradient is a rise of 1 over a run of 1, and 1 divided by 1 is 1. So we can write for this line here, the gradient, which is m, is 1. Now I'm going to make this line steeper. And now if we look at how many rises for each run, we can see that it rises once, twice, and it only runs once. So the rise is plus 2 because it's going up, and the run is 1. And positive 2 divided by 1 is 2. So we can write that as m equals 2. The gradient of this line is 2. I'm tilting the line up further, and now the gradient is a rise of 1, 2, 3, and a run of 1. So a rise of 3 over 1 is the same as saying that the gradient is 3. What happens now if I tilt the line down? Now this is where it can get a little bit tricky, because if you have in your mind rise over run, now we're not really seeing a rise. But what I want you to think about is either a rise of negative 1 unit, or you can think of it as a fall of 1 unit. So if you want to think of it up here as a rise or fall, that's fine. Otherwise, a rise of negative units. That might be actually a better way of thinking about it, because you'll be having a negative number in front of your gradient for these ones. So you can still think of it as a rise, but it's a negative rise. It's going down. So this graph is falling by 1 unit, and it's running by 1 unit. So its rise is negative 1, and its run is 1. So negative 1 divided by 1 gives us a gradient of negative 1. What happens if I tilt it down further? Now we see that it is rising not just negative 1 unit, but negative 2 units. So negative 2 for a run of 1. So negative 2 over 1. And I write this one out in full. Negative 2 over a run of 1 is exactly the same as saying a gradient of negative 2. Tilt it a bit further, and I'm sure you can tell what's going to happen here. Now our graph is tilting down even further, so we see a fall of 1, 2, 3, so negative 3 for a run of 1. Negative 3 divided by 1 gives us a gradient of negative 3. So when you're talking about gradients, the main thing that you need to do is, if you've got a graph, look for the rise and the run, and particularly you need to find points on the line that cross one of these types of intersections, because if you have a line and it crosses there, but it also crosses, say, here, you can easily count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces up, so plus 5, and it's running 1, 2, 3 spaces across, which would give you a gradient of 5 up and 3 across. Don't pick any spots that are partway along, because it's going to be difficult to count how many units. Always look for ones that are bullseye right in the middle of a grid. Now, very important points. Firstly, the rise describes movement in the direction of the y-axis. So it's asking, is the line travelling upwards or downwards? If it's travelling up, then this will be a positive number. If it's travelling down, it will be a negative number. Always associate a negative sign with the rise, not the run. If it has a negative sign, it is a negative rise, which really means the line is travelling down or falling. Please do not associate the negative sign with the run. I want you always to associate it with, is it going up or down, not to the right or to the left. We want to stick with the run only being to the right. It will make your life much easier. The run describes movement in the direction of the x-axis, and the x-axis goes to the right and to the left. However, you should always run to the right. Think of it like reading some text. Right now, hopefully you're reading along with me, so right now your eyes are following the text from left to right. I want you to always look at the line from left to right. And when you're plotting points in, once you've plotted at one point and you're looking at the gradient to do your rise over run, you're always, always, always moving to the right and never, ever, 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 ever to the left. Let's do some practice questions. So this is a little car. This car can only drive to the right. So this car is going to help us make sure we are only ever running to the right when we are looking at these graphs, at these lines. So all we're doing for this activity is saying, is it a positive gradient? Is it a negative gradient? So I'm going to click through. I'm going to give you about half a second to think of it, and then I'm going to say what it is. So the first one is a positive gradient. The car would be driving up. This one's also a positive gradient. Here the car would be going down, so this is a negative gradient. This one's also negative, positive, and quite steep. Negative, it doesn't go down very steeply. It's a fairly shallow gradient, this one, but it still goes down. If that car was driving along this line, it would be going down. This is also negative, positive, negative. So hopefully you now have a better understanding of what a y-intercept is and what a gradient is. And these are powerful tools for being able to draw your linear graphs. As always, thanks for watching.